Hey, thank you for joining us today for another Marketing Sherpa webinar. Today, we're going to be taking a look back at Lead Gen Summit 2013. We just got back about 2 weeks in San Francisco, and we're going to take a look at all we learned from marketers just like you and try to take those 2 days full of sessions,
Packed
300
days.
marketers, bunch of case studies, and just, I don't know, smush it down into 30 minutes of rich takeaways. How does that sound?
That sounds amazing.
We also want to hear from you, hear your lead gen takeaways too. If you attended Lead Gen Summit, if you didn't, just what you learned about lead gen marketing over the years. We'd also like to hear your questions. You can use hashtag Sherpa Webinar. You can also use hashtag Sherpa Webinar to get to know some other marketers that are interested in lead gen. That was one of the most interesting things to me about Lead Gen Summit. Seeing not just all the wisdom that came from the stage, but all the wisdom that was in the audience. And
Peers talking to each other. Absolutely. I see Roger's already online, who was at Lead Gen Summit, so you can definitely tap into him and get some of his learnings too. So
yeah, thanks for joining us, Roger. I am Daniel Burstein, the Director of Editorial Content here at MECLABS. With me is
Pamela Markey. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing at MECLABS. And this is us at Lead Gen Summit having a great time. So we're thrilled to be here.
We had the opportunity to co-host, and as with everything we do, we created just a ton of content around Lead Gen Summit. So this webinar is just one small piece of it. You see some of the links there. It's for our kind of SlideShare and YouTube audiences. But if you go to hashtag Sherpa Webinar, we're also going to be tweeting through lots of other content about the speakers and case studies that we talked about at Lead Gen Summit. With that, let's just jump right into it.
Let's
Look
go.
at one of the first learnings. And I'd say at a high level, what you're going to see we get into today is two big things I took away was quality over quantity.
Absolutely.
Something we hear a lot, but we really have some great examples here. And also, listen to the customer. A lot of times we assume we know more about the customer than we actually do. And this is a great example of that, where Casey Lincoln, the VP of Marketing at Smart Bear Software, really want to try to find that human voice that would relate to the marketer. So we have a question here from Imran, a senior director. Actually, it's less of a question, more of a statement, wanting to know about lead gen in the tech B2B space. And I think Casey Lincoln's example with Smart Bear Software is the perfect example for that. So his challenge, his audience is IT developers, others in the IT field, a pretty skeptical audience, a hard audience to reach. And he had some great nurturing tracks using his automation platform to be able to reach out to those audience. A lot of it was driven by a trial download, but again, they're skeptical. So here's an example. What you see here is a nurturing track that after they download that trial, it's a 30-day trial, they have a great nurturing track to teach that developer about the product, eventually, hopefully move them to a product purchase. But at the top right there, he does something that most marketers don't do. He puts the opt-out right up there, very, very clear. And we had Casey on a webinar a few months ago, and some marketers saw that and they were upset after. I looked at the survey after, because we always ask surveys at the end of these webinars to help learn from you how we can improve this. And they said, why did you put that in there? That's not a best practice. That's some bad advice. And so I talked to Casey about it, and he did a lot of A/B testing, and this is what he found was most effective. So I put this first at the very beginning, because one of the things we want to do today is share best practices, but also challenge best practices.
Yes, absolutely.
All the things we're talking about today are spurs for you to test with your own audience. He tested, this was most effective, and it makes sense why. If you look, he's got a 2.3% opt-out rate, right? No one likes any opt-outs, but again, this is at the beginning of a drip campaign. This is at the beginning of a 30-day drip campaign. And the last thing you want to do is harass people and get them to feel like you're just being barraged with their email and it's spam. You want them to opt in. You want them to be a part of it. And I think Pamela mentioned when we were looking at this before, by not opting out, right?
Yeah, I think you just, in your mind of the customer, they're saying to themselves, you know what, I like what's coming here. It just reemphasizes in the customer's mind that they like what they want, give me some more.
And so speaking of A/B testing, here's a really interesting A/B test that Casey did. So here you see the pretty much traditional marketing email. It looks a little creative, but no bull, save 10% off, learn more. Everyone probably does a marketing email similar to this. So this was the interesting thing about the A/B test. I like to call this the Jon Stewart test. If you're familiar with Jon Stewart from The Daily Show, he takes the news and he skewers it and he adds a little irony to it. And so what they did is, for the treatment, that was the control we just saw, they had the sales rep send an email. They pre-wrote the email that said something along the lines of, below is an email our marketing department sent out about the promotion. We asked if they could tone down the marketing fluff for this one. It seems they took it to heart. And then they included a link, as you can see there, to the actual email, so people still got that information, right? I mean, so out of the box to get the sales reps to make fun of the market. Not that they don't do it all the time amongst themselves.
Right, just personalizes them, gives the sales rep, this is a real person, so.
And let's take a look at the results. So, I mean, really, really impressive. You'll see there, Pamela's a color expert, not me, but I think that's the magenta.
Fuchsia.
Fuchsia that has the much higher return there. You can see right there, that's for one of those segments, it's almost triple the return. So we put this up front. When you're looking at your lead gen, again, don't assume you know about the customers. See how you can learn from the customers. A/B testing is a way to do that. And you can find some interesting results. And another very interesting point we want to make from this chart is you don't just see one result from KC. So what he did with his automation software is he really segmented his list to understand all of the different segments and how he can reach out to them.
Awesome. So this is a snapshot from the live test that we do at our summits. It's one of my favorite parts of our summits, in which we actually develop, launch, and validate an entire test over 24 hours, which is not an easy thing to do. This is Kyle Foster, research manager here at MECLABS. So he, working with the audience and with the labs back here at in Jacksonville, developed a test sponsored by Acton. And what we did is came up with sort of different case scenarios for lead generation. Obviously, it's the Lead Gen Summit. We're trying to get leads. So we had a couple different incentives, marketing Sherpa quick guides. Our hypotheses were, if we add an option to choice, have a choice between 3 incentive options, we'll add to the perceived value. And that perceived value perhaps will allow us to add additional form fields, so you can maybe ask for another piece of data. So the idea was, the research question would be, which incentive approach is more effective for generating leads? And whatever in your mind as a marketer is, what does effective mean? So we asked the audience, again, they got to choose these things. Let's choose the incentive. So we gave them all of the marketing Sherpa quick guides produced in the last little while. And being lead gen marketers,
I just had to tease the audience about, because as we talked about, one of those biggest learnings is don't assume the customer is you, for example. We always make that assumption, I would do this, I would do that. Your customer could be very different from you. And don't assume you know the customer. I think it's really interesting, a group of lead gen marketers, and they chose the lead generation topic. So.
Exactly, with email marketing and content marketing as the additional incentives. So we also asked them to choose the form selection. So we said, okay, we think because we're going to give the customer a choice to choose between incentives, that maybe they'll give us a little bit more information, increase the friction a little bit. How many 2, 3, 4 fields do you want to add? They added 1, more on the conservative side, and they chose to add job title to the form. So if we look at kind of what the control looked like, this is just standard download page, a piece of content, the simple form. Then we provided the one there, the treatment one, which had the choice between, so you can choose one of those 3 tabs to choose the one that's right for you. So again, not all your customers are interested in just one thing. And then the treatment 2, which had the same exact thing, but adding that additional form field. So we also asked the audience to predict a winner, which, they picked treatment 1, which makes sense since there's the additional incentive, but not the additional form field. So we tested it, ran the results, and ultimately the control actually won, which was interesting. I mean, what it told us really was that the additional incentive choice did not really have an impact. That being said, it's 31% significant difference, statistical significance, sorry. So, it's kind of a wash.
But what it really did tell us too is the audience, you can see overwhelmingly 64% chose that treatment 1, when in reality there really wasn't that much difference between the control and treatment. So they had a bit of a false confidence there. And again,
it's true.
The benefit of testing, you can really learn from your audience and not just assume.
Yep. So the choice incentive didn't seem to increase the perceived value. We also took a look at what the people filling out the form chose. Obviously, the lead gen far and away was the winner. That being said, it was the default when you landed on the page. It may not have been as clear to people if the tabs that there was a choice. So you'd have to test that again. We also found that the perceived value does not outweigh the perceived cost. So that additional form field, yes, it was reducing the form field rate or the lead gen rate by 11%, but you have to ask yourself, like Dan said, quality is a key factor. So if it's really important to you to have that additional piece of content, that additional piece of data, you may want to look at adding extra form fields.
Yeah, this was really interesting on 2 levels, I think, because again, to tease the audience a bit, they weren't that bold. We gave them the opportunity to add 3, 4 fields. They only added 1. And the field they added too, it wasn't phone number, it wasn't like propensity to buy, it wasn't a budget number, it was simply job title. And even with just adding that 1, so if you have to make the case to your sales boss and saying, hey, adding more fields is going to reduce the number of leads we get, this is a great example of that. Because just adding that job title, 11% less leads, and how much value does that job title really add? Now, on the flip side, if job title is just so crucial to the sales team,
or revenue, or industry, or whatever it might be.
Whatever that number, the 11% less leads might be really worth it to actually be giving sales qualified leads, or actually having in your nurturing track qualified leads that you can nurture better because you know more about them, you can segment better, and eventually end up with more revenue. So you can really look at those results two ways, and that's, I think, the really interesting thing about A/B testing.
Yeah, and it was great. I mean, marketers are asking for how do I test, what should I test, and having this sort of live dynamic thing happening at the summit really lent an energy to it. So thanks so much to Kyle and Steve and Brittany and the whole team who ran that, and of course Acton who sponsored it. I will mention as well, so we're prepping the live test for our next event, which is the email summit in February. So Dan and I are going to be in Vegas with the rest of the team. We're excited to announce our keynote speakers have been chosen, Dr. Noel Goldstein and Dr. Dan Ariely, who are incredible behavior economists, as well as Dr. Flip McLaughlin, our founder and CEO here. And you can check out, there's the link, our VIP offer is ending. That's the end of the month, so it's $700 off if you get it before Halloween.
Where are we going to be in Vegas? What is it?
The Aria Hotel, which is so beautiful. I'm really excited. So hope to see you all there.
Yeah, it'll be great. Lead Gen Summit was a sellout, and so we're hoping for great things from Email Summit. We also wanted to thank our sponsor of this webinar. The sponsor helps make this information free for you. That sponsor's Oracle Eloqua, and they wanted to let you know that Eloqua's platform makes it easier to analyze how well a campaign is doing across channels. They had to say it. So there you go. Oracle Eloqua, thank you. Let's jump in. So when you think about testing and you think about your customers, I mean, something that really comes out is the value proposition. That's a frequent thing to test to understand what value you can provide your customers, how you can best communicate that. But John Campy, we've had a chance to talk to him. This is the second summit we've had with him.
He was in Boston as well, yes.
At our optimization summit. I've learned a lot from John. And one thing he did that was really brilliant is he doesn't only try to better communicate to the customers he can serve how he can serve them. He tries to better communicate to the customers that he can't serve, that he cannot serve them, right? And so what that ends up in the end is, again, we're not really looking for leads when we talk about lead generation. We're probably looking for closed deals or revenue or something like that. So if you're getting people to become a lead and sign up to become a lead who you're really not a fit for, your company can't serve, you're really just going to alienate them. You're going to waste sales time. So let's take a look at how John did that. So John works for a company called CRC Healthcare. They have a large network of treatment facilities for different addictions, such as drug addiction, alcohol addiction. This particular clinic was called Southern Indiana Clinic, and it was an opiate treatment facility. And so let's take a look. This was an A/B test of landing pages. Here's the control landing page. If you look at it, it had some challenges in communicating the value to the people that they could serve. You know, there's bad stock photos, for example. People see those bad stock photos, they don't relate to them. They're not really looking at the type of people like them. There's a bad call to action, lots of anxiety in that call to action. What does get a free assessment mean? Who's gonna call me? Bad navigation, confusing, there's a lot of friction. So let's take a look at the treatment. We'll take a bit of a closer look at that treatment there. And we can see they did a better job of communicating the value to those they could serve, right? They added credibility. Look at that. That's a real picture of a real person. It's got a little story under there. It's probably hard to read. They better sequence the information you would need to know before making such a big decision, like possibly contacting an opiate facility. And really, they were trying to reduce the anxiety there. It's a big, tough decision to make.
It's really tough.
But here's what I really like. Here's what we can all think about. These are examples of how he told people he couldn't serve, hey, we're not right for you. You know, you should find another solution. So by talking about the schedule, and we have in quotation marks, because we're trying to show what the potential customer or potential patient might be thinking when they're looking at that page. And by seeing that, they might be thinking, hey, this doesn't fit my schedule. So right away, they're telling people, hey, if it doesn't fit your schedule, you're not a fit. You shouldn't become a lead. You shouldn't contact us. Another thing, you know, he said some patients are looking for a private doctor's office. That's great for them. That's not what CRC does. That's not what Southern Indiana Clinic does. We can't serve them best. We want to show them, hey, we're not right for you.
And I think that's a big thing, like you say, when you can tell people that you can't help them or they're not right for you, I think they'll believe you when you say you can help them. And I know especially in John and the team at CRC really work on trust. You know, it's not a lead for them. These are patients, these are real people. And being able to build that trust is very important for them. I mean, for any marketer, but especially for something like this.
Absolutely, and let's show what that trust results in. So they had a 19% increase in inquiries, which is pretty much what they call their leads. So that's pretty good. They got 19% more leads, but here's where it really gets powerful. 19% more leads, they get 66 more admissions. So that would be an actual closed deal for them. So again, by making that value proposition more exclusive, more focused on those they could serve, the actual leads are getting in. Not only were they able to get in more leads by telling people that they could serve them better, they're able to get better leads that actually become what their final goal is, which is an admission, or for many marketers on the phone, might be a sale or something along those lines. Taking a deeper look into what John did, here are some of his pay-per-click advertising testing. We had a question from Heather. She's a marketing assistant. She wants to know something that relates to value proposition and product. How do you differentiate the two in one ad? So let's take a look at that. And I think the real answer is you don't differentiate the value proposition from the product. Your company, your overall company has a value proposition. There's a core value proposition to your company. And then your product has a sub-value proposition of that. So that plays off of the overall value proposition in your company, but is unique in a way to that product. And we can get deeper and talk about how there should be unique value propositions for also each process you're asking your customer to do, and each customer really. Looking at how John did this in his pay-per-click test. So company logic versus customer logic. And what we're talking about here again is that don't assume you know your customer. It's very difficult for marketers. We get so attached to our products, we essentially drink the Kool-Aid.
We really do.
And we think our products are great. So the company logic they had is we have the most doctors, therefore we have the best care, right? And it's easy to feel that way, like, hey, that would be great. If you're the market leader, you've got the most doctors in the industry, you'd be touting that everywhere. Well, here's the thing, they were kind of testing to see if that was true. Maybe people don't care. Maybe it doesn't matter to have the best doctors. Maybe it matters to have the doctor that will serve my wife or my husband best if she has an addiction. And so they tested it against that customer logic to make sure, hey, this is someone that, an organization that will really care for my loved ones. So you can see some of the differences there. Get a free assessment call, now considered a top recovery clinic, versus the traditional alternative therapies, which John's team felt tied into the actual taking care of the patient a little better. That was the branded pay-per-click ads. Here's the non-branded pay-per-click ads. And you can see also an element they had was the luxury, the exclusive luxury of the facility, which they felt, they were really proud of and felt people would care about. When they tested that against, again, the top addiction clinic, traditional alternative therapies, those therapies that would more take care of a loved one.
Right.
Let's take a look at some of those results. So,
wow.
these are pretty astounding. I don't think I've ever seen pay-per-click results. This incredible. And I think John even mentioned on the stage that the rep from his search engine was just blown away because they had never seen results like this. He got a 14,000% increase for his branded pay-per-click ads. It had a 44.2% click-through rate. That means that almost half of people that were exposed to that search engine results page clicked on that pay-per-click ad, which is just phenomenal and through the roof. Even as non-branded pay-per-click ads, 3,300% increase, really impressive. And I think, again, what we can all learn about this is focusing on sequencing what your customer is thinking at that time. So what is the customer really thinking when they're going through that step of the process when they see that pay-per-click ad? And not guessing what that is, but testing to try to learn and see what that really is.
So we're talking a lot about testing. This is another example. Jacob Baldwin, he's search engine marketing manager at One Call Now, and he does way more than just search engine marketing. I know, did the entire website redesign there. And One Call Now, they do sort of communication, broadcast messaging over the phone to places like communities and churches and schools and like inclement weather, that sort of thing. So that's sort of unique prospect. And what his focus was, making it as easy as possible for visitors to convert. And he discovered that through testing. So he brought us through a couple different tests. I believe he was on a webinar not that long ago as well. But what he was trying to do was really concentrate on his free trial process. And he wanted to reduce the number of steps in that, but also wanted to take a fresh eyes look at what was in that creative. So this is the example of the homepage, and actually we spurred this because we got a question from Louis, who asked, he's the president of his company, asked, when it comes to getting people to register online, is a landing page really more effective than a homepage with an obvious registration form? Because you got to think, especially lead gen marketers, we want to get that form to them right away so they can fill it out. That being said, your homepage is tough. I mean, it's valuable real estate. It's often hard to fight for your little plot there. In this case, Jacob took a different approach. He put the free trial obviously very front and center, and then put the form right behind that. This is actually one of several tests he did on the homepage. This is a quadrant type call to action, which we talk about multiple calls to action that may be equally weighted, may not work, but he also tried one with 3. He actually started with 11 in this space, so this is sort of where he landed at this point. So when you jump into the free trial, 2 things he noticed, and I think it's really something to be said, because us marketers, like Dan said, we drink the Kool-Aid, we see our pages all the time, we see the same stuff, and it just starts to just blur a little bit. So when he looked at it with fresh eyes, he said, gosh, my free trial, the call to action is check out, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's something you'd see on Amazon or something like that. And also, you see just above that, there's a $sign, there's a subtotal and a total. So just, a little bit of anxiety there, even though there's definitely no credit card involved. We're not asking for any money whatsoever. So he just shortened the steps and then just tweaked that call to action to start your free trial. Just much clearer, much less friction or anxiety, and remove those $signs. And he saw a great result. So 55.3 increase in lead capture. That's through the free trial sign-up process. So really his takeaway there was don't make your visitors work unnecessarily hard to convert. And the big thing, like Dan said, is we're marketers. We live and breathe our products and our pages and our channels, everything every day. Take this lens, test, but also come at it from a customer-focused point of view.
This ties into a question we just got from Laura. She asked, when it comes to registration form fields, if your objective is generating the highest number of leads, is there any research to support what the optimal number of fields is and what those fields should be? Also, any insight as to how to implement progressive disclosure with greatest success? So I wanted to bring it back to this page because I wanted to mention two things. So yes, if you are just looking for the highest number of leads, it's strip that form down to the bare basics. So
an email.
yeah, basically just ask for email or whatever contact information you need. That would be absolutely it. Because when we're thinking of form fields, don't just think of the form fields specifically. You have to think about what the potential customer might be thinking when they're going through them. And there's usually friction, there's anxiety involved in those form fields. So as much as you can reduce that, you're going to get more leads. Now, as it comes to progressive profiling and that sort of thing, one thing to think about too is even before you get to progressive profiling, you can have a two-step process. So in this case, it wasn't just the form fields, but like Pamela said, changing a button. So don't just look at your form fields. What does your button say? Is your button communicating the value of the next step? Is your button communicating the value of submitting, even if it's just that email address? And then once they're going to that next step, you can ask some more information right there. So for example, if you're just asking for an email address, the next step might be, hey, give us some more information about you so we can send you only what's relevant. And in that way, you can help start to segment your list and get what they're interested in. And then as Laura suggests, if you have the technology set up, that each time you send them a valuable piece of information, you can progressively build up that profile and you don't need to get it all at once.
And KC too, I think had the assessment, was it KC or was it John? The assessment call to action, like if people feel like you're gonna call them immediately, it makes it real tough. So that call to action is really important. Your information's safe, we're not gonna call you, I'm getting something of value by doing this, will make a big difference as well.
Yeah, so Pamela's point, form fields are important, getting the right number of form fields, but more important than that really is communicating that you will be getting more value from taking this action than the cost to you. And even if it's just an email address, there is still a cost there. I mean, we're all worried about getting spam. Who wants to take the time to do that? So let's jump in. We had Joe Blitzy, the founder of
awesome.
Content Marketing Institute there. It was a great pleasure. He's one of the key people when it comes to content marketing. And what I really like what he talked about, it's not what you're marketing, it's how you're marketing it. So content marketing, people think about it as this specific thing and I want to do content marketing and it's more how you do content marketing. Are you truly doing it? And this ties into a question we have here from Phyllis. She's a demand gen consultant. She says, good content is so critical to lead generation. I couldn't agree more, Phyllis.
Yes.
How do you balance the desire for leads registrations with the desire to give good content away without requiring registration? So I think it really all comes down to the funnel as we're looking at the funnel here and determining what your funnel is and what the path is for your customers, right? So we all probably agree that at the very top of the funnel, we want to keep things ungated because we want to bring attention and interest to our sites. We also want to encourage virality. We want to encourage sharing. We want to encourage people to engage before they know enough to trust us. Once they trust us, then this is what Joe calls the messy middle there. You have to determine, at what level do you really need to ask for information? I would suggest as late as possible because you want to keep providing as much value as possible without, as we talked about before, throwing that cost onto it. But then once you even do have that registration form, that disclosure, again, it's not just asking for that registration, it's clearly communicating value. Why should they take that next step with you? Even if this is far from where they're purchasing from you, it's still a cost, providing that information. They might think they're being called by sales. They might think they're getting a lot of sales emails. So make sure you communicate that value, why they should take the next step after they've looked at some of your totally free top of the funnel pieces that don't require registration. Why should they get more engaged with you? And then a really interesting thing that Joe talked about was don't stop. Don't stop at the sale. A newspaper is a subscription. It's a great example of content marketing. It shows up on your driveway every day. There's not a campaign to send you newspapers until eventually you buy a thing and then they just totally forget about you. And so you can see kind of I don't know, actually, maybe Joe's double helix funnel. I don't know what to call it. So it doesn't end at the sale. It starts again then, once you've already sold to people, making sure they're satisfied, making sure you can retain them, helping to upsell, turning them into evangelists, which is what you ultimately want to do, so they can flip and then send out a lot of your totally free, no registration form required top of the funnel information.
Absolutely.
And let's take a look a little more at what Joe taught. So if you're very interested in content marketing, one of the things he said is start by defining the outcome. I think that's a challenge that a lot of content marketers have. They're not sure exactly what they're going to do with their content marketing. They just know they should be doing it, blogging, putting stuff out there. This was an example, Indium Corporation. They were an engineering firm, and here's an example of their objective. Again, not to sell. It's not to sell a product. It's not to do anything for Indium, but it's to help the audience. In this case, it's engineers, and they identified a challenging question for them, which is around soldering. So soldering, or however you say
Soldering,
I think. So when you're looking at your content marketing, it's not about how can you drive people through a funnel, it's how can you help people so they want to engage with you more. And then Joe said take the next step and do what he calls a content marketing mission statement. He gave us an example here for Inc. magazine, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. And this is their mission statement where they're talking about what the whole point of Inc. magazine is. Again, it's not to sell, it's to do things like provide resources, it's to inspire, it's to engage with that core target audience. And it also gets into what they're going to deliver, what, as we talked about with the engineering firm, what's the ultimate outcome for the audience. Again, it's that outcome for the audience, not the outcome for your company.
And it keeps you on track, I think, not only the marketer, but then anybody that produces content within your group, anyone who comes over and says, oh, put a sales piece in the content blog. You just really create that mission statement and keeps you true to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and then finally, when we talk about content marketing, Joe talked about finding that bigger story. So
in the most unexpected places.
Yeah, and it's a challenge we see all the time for lead gen marketers. We have nothing to talk about that will engage our customers. Our products are boring. We have a great case study we did before with a company that was a concrete company. And I think we call the case study Watching Concrete Dry, because they did this really fascinating YouTube video showing all the ins and outs of what it takes to make a concrete factory and a concrete plant. And here's another example Joe showed us, which I would not have thought. Me and Pamela sometimes debate this. Is Facebook really the place for some really obscure B2B lead generation marketer? This is the Maersk Group. If you're unfamiliar with them, they do freight, shipping. And if you can see on the screen, they have 1.5 million likes on their Facebook page. And here's how they did it. They found that people were really interested in the background of shipping, what's involved in shipping. I mean, we kind of take it for granted that all these things end up around the world. We have products from China, we're sending products to Europe or whatever. And so they engaged, they showed the background of it. And here's just a beauty shot of their
shipping containers. It's beautiful.
And by doing it, the interesting thing is not only did they engage customers, they engaged their own employees. Their own employees became really proud of showing off. Hey, here's the things that are involved in my job. Here's the types of things we're doing. And I know we hear that challenge all the time too from marketers, how to engage employees in their content marketing. So when you find that storyline, when you find what's really core to your company, you can really engage employees more.
That example serves even more than just the lead gen. If you notice there, the comment that they've placed there next to the photo is about job openings. So it can serve many areas of your organization if you get that content out there and get your people paying attention to what you've got going, even if it's shipping containers.
That's a good point. Another example here, LinkedIn page. LinkedIn, I tend to think data, very heavy information. They're using beauty shots of their ships. So again, a very interesting way to engage, maybe give you some ideas to engage. So we're going to do one last one. We're going to fly through this one, but doing your keyword research really pays off. And this will be really interesting to you if you ever had a disagreement with sales about anything ever. So this was from Marie Weiss. This was grandtech.com, which they do, I think, they're a B2B systems integration company. And so what they did was they went to the sales team and they said, give us some keywords. What do you think are some keywords that will be very powerful? And they came up with things like manufacturing, infrastructure, CPU data, and you can see some of the click-through rates for those. Then they did this very intense data deep dive. They looked at the data analysis. They looked at what people were clicking on. And the interesting thing was they got twice the click-through. And so the powerful thing to me here is often for marketers, sales is able to say, hey, we know the customer better. We talk to the customer every day. What you're doing is wrong. And unfortunately, I hope we don't have salespeople on the line, but sales seems to get the glory when they hit their numbers, but blame marketing when they don't. Marketing's always doing something wrong. So by being data-driven, by doing some of the things we've already talked about here, by testing, by really learning about your customers, you can show that data and show that proof and say, hey, you have that gut instinct, it's great, but here's what we really learned about from the data. So I think that's the final takeaway. Data always helps win a conversation, even with sales.
Yes, absolutely. Data always wins.
So with that, thank you for taking the half hour to join us today.
Yes, and you missed, if you were there, hopefully we had a chance to see you, but if not, hopefully we'll see you, like I mentioned, in February at Email Summit, and I think we've tweeted all these links and put everything, the SlideShare is available, so hope to speak to you again soon.
Yeah, you can see those on #SherpWebinar, and please fill out the survey at the end. It helps us improve these webinars. Thank you.